Okay, we are back. I hope everybody is having a great week. We're back for another Unshush talk, and today we're going to be joined by Hollaback, which is an organisation looking to end harassment in all of its forms. And we're going to be joined by Gabriella, who is a training and communications associate from the team. So just going to wait for her to join. Here we go. Hopefully that has worked. Hello. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Yes. Having I don't even know what day it is actually. A nice Thursday so far. I was like, what day is it? How has your week been?
It's been a busy week, but that's good, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm excited to talk to you today. So,
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here and to be joining us to talk more about kind of what you're doing. I just gave you a very short introduction and I couldn't actually speak when I was giving the introduction. So I don't know if you want to start by just introducing yourself maybe.
sure. So hi everyone. I am Gabriela Mejia. I am part of Team Hollaback. I'm a trainings and communications associate, meaning I have a lot of different roles that I take up. But yeah, I've been with the org for 3 years, for a good while, and I'm really passionate about the work of ending harassment, bringing an end to harassment.
It's a very important topic, and
Mm.
yeah, I mean, even this week it's definitely been highlighted. Even today, in the UK, I don't know if you've seen the story about Sarah Everard, but that's definitely brought things to attention. I think in terms of harassment and just the issue that's still facing so many people and the safety of women, and obviously not just women but people in those positions just not feeling safe outside. So I guess maybe we could start by kind of going into like harassment. What actually comes under harassment? Because I know it is obviously quite a broad term. How would you define harassment?
So I found that when I started getting into our training work, where we try to define these things for people in our trainings, I found it very personally helpful how we describe harassment. So we do break it down into categories and into actions that it can show up as. But this basic definition we give it, street harassment specifically, is behavior that is unwanted and unwelcomed. Because sometimes harassment can be nonverbal, which is tricky to identify as harassment because we often think it's just catcalling, right? Or comment. But harassment can be following. It can be staring to intimidate, staring to invade someone's, space. And so it can be nonverbal. It can, of course, be verbal. But even when it's verbal, it's not always words. Sometimes harassment is animal noises or whistling. And another category that we break it down as, of course, is that harassment can be physical. Physical, as in groping or grabbing, but it could also be moving up to someone's space and brushing them or rubbing them with the intent to make them uncomfortable and to invade that space. So I find the most helpful definition is behavior that is unwanted and unwelcomed. And I encourage anyone.
No, that's such a good way to define.
Yeah. Sorry, you were gonna say.
Oh no, sorry. I was just like, it's a great way to define it. And it is, there's so many ways that you can think of it. And I guess, as you're saying, it's anything that would make the person essentially feel uncomfortable, right? So even if it's not physical, even if it is, just the noise or just that invasion of safety, I guess, for the person to not feel comfortable.
And some people ask whether their own experiences, they ask me, they ask other folks from our org, whether their experience, and they'll share their experience with us, and we welcome that because we want to be there to listen. They'll ask us whether it's harassment, and I think the real authority on what happens to you is you. So you get to assess what happened, and if it was unwanted and unwelcomed, then it was harassment. But only you know that. And when you do feel comfortable to share with us, we are here to listen, to give strategies.
Yeah. And you've mentioned, obviously, a lot of it is kind of like street harassment, but harassment can show up in kind of like the workplace and other places too, right?
Yes. So what we know is that harassment in public spaces, doesn't have a lot of, there's not this wide understanding that it's unacceptable, but I think there is now a growing understanding that harassment in workplaces is unacceptable because there are protections now for employees, right? So that's a different part of our work that we are also growing in, which is advising workplaces on how to be harassment free or how to deal with conflict in a way that doesn't move into the space of harassment. And harassment in workplaces, there's more support there. I think in public spaces, we have to be each other's support as just bystanders on the street.
I was going to say, then obviously when you are outside, not always alone, but it's you don't have those kind of that protection around you. And I know you cover the bystander intervention. So yeah, maybe we could talk a bit more about what that is, what it looks like, and how we can help each other. When we are outside and we might see somebody or notice someone feeling uncomfortable, like how can we interject almost?
I also found the tools on bystander intervention empowering personally because I use them. Someone very close to me was harassed in the street corner where I've been harassed before, growing up in my neighborhood. And using the tools that we share, which the methodology is called the 5 Ds of bystander intervention, I was able to intervene, and I felt comfortable enough intervening directly, and make sure harassment ended, and then make sure that it was seen as unacceptable by person doing the harassing and everyone else that was around, other bystanders who weren't doing anything. So just a rundown of what our methodology is and why we chose bystander intervention. We chose to focus on this because we identified bystander intervention in stories of harassment that people shared with us. We found that to be this positive link between a lot of stories, that when someone intervened to say something or show some kind of support, that person's healing improved from the instance of harassment. So bystander intervention, you are likely already doing it. That's what I like to tell people. We do it all the time for each other. We see something go wrong, we step up and we help. And it's sort of a decision that we don't even make. It just happens. But with harassment, a lot of us freeze. So we created the 5 Ds. So in those moments that you freeze, your brain will have something in mind that will just pop in and help you intervene. So the 5 Ds are distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. And we go into,
I love them already.
Yeah, we go in depth on all of these in our training. But I can give you an example of each if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just going back to that point of you talking about people freezing, I think that is super important to highlight. We are a platform, I didn't actually give us a little mini introduction, but we are a platform that is supporting women that have kind of experienced sexual violence. Speaking about harassment as a topic, this is the first time we're covering just like harassment, But, you know, even some of the reactions that people have in these experiences, you know, the fight, flight, freeze, you know, this can happen in harassment too. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because, you know, that is a body reaction, right, that you have when it's that response to fear.
Yes. And fear is good for us. Fear lets us know that, you know, there's a threat somewhere.
Yeah.
It's also exhausting to walk down the street and have that response all the time, because you don't know if that harassment's going to escalate and be a threat to you. So it is important every time that we teach people tools that they first and foremost trust their gut. So know that that response, that assessment of their safety is going to be essential in how they choose to move forward with some of the tools that we share. Because some of them are indirect. They all are meant to de-escalate situations.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you bringing up that point about this fight or flight response.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, we've just had a comment here, and I know we're going to go into obviously defining the 5Ds in a little bit more detail, but, you know, someone's saying we need more male advocates. So this work that you're doing, obviously, with the 5Ds, it's not just for women to stand up for women, it's everybody to stand up for any kind of injustice that they see outside, right?
Right. So we've actually, our mission is really inclusive of all kinds of harassment. Of course, in this Instagram live, I've been talking and referring to our Stand Up Against Street Harassment training, which is dealing with gender-based harassment, which also doesn't only happen to women. But our mission as an organization, as Hollaback, is to end harassment in all its forms. And men are harassed, people of color are harassed, LGBTQ plus people are harassed, people with disabilities are harassed. So there are a lot of different kinds of people that are harassed, and it is also just in all our best interests to intervene when we see harassment. So we do have, you know, male team members in our organization, but we also have a lot of men who show up for our trainings, because I think when we understand harassment as an issue that makes, you know, communities that could be tight-knit communities be fractured because no one trusts each other and you can't really talk to strangers in your community. When that happens, we know that it becomes more clear that it is everyone's issue, even if you're not being harassed on the street. And that includes men who maybe some aren't harassed as often.
Absolutely, yeah. It is everybody's issue, and the only way we're going to, you know, come to some kind of move forward is if everybody is listening, everybody is paying attention, and everybody is, you know, working towards this intervention and just trying to see the future where people feel safe to go outside, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also essential for those of us who sometimes, you know, have more privileges in certain spaces to use that and to step into being the most supportive we can be. And I think bystander intervention is a great way of doing that, uplifting people's voices and their side of stories and their concerns is a great way of doing that as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you for whoever sent that.
Yes, appreciated all its forms. Lily, Nova, hi. So should we go into a bit more on the 5Ds? I know we kind of just was going into a bit more things there, but yeah, maybe if we could go into the 5Ds. I know obviously there's a lot of, you could probably talk about it for a very long time. Maybe like a snapshot of each one with a bit more depth would be amazing.
Yes, I think I can do a quick rundown for you.
Yeah.
Of course, for more depth, check out our work. But first, the first D, and we did place them in a certain order on purpose. We went from, you know, they're all meant to de-escalate, but we went from indirect to direct, which is only one of them. Distract is kind of creative. You are creating a distraction which will bring an end to the harassment, but you're not addressing the harassment directly.
Yeah.
And with each of these Ds, you're not showing up to be a hero. You're showing up to support someone. So what that someone may need in that moment is for the harassment to end. So if you can provide that with distract, like going up to them and pretending to know them and letting them know, hey, how are your parents? Haven't seen you in a while.
That's a very good idea. Yeah. I was going to say, what would be an example of distract? Like, do you throw something?
You could. You can cause a commotion, a ruckus, and just make sure that it pulls everyone's attention and that the distraction is bringing an end to that harassment because it is so eye-catching. So that is an example of distract. And the next one is delegate, which is like the name suggests, delegating to someone else. And I suggest this for folks who don't feel comfortable most of the time, feel like the harassment may turn on them. And that is a completely valid concern to have. Most of your concerns are valid, if not all are valid. So if you don't want to put yourself in a situation where now you are being hurt, right? Or hurt by the words or the actions of others, then you can delegate. You can turn to other bystanders and ask them to step in.
I mean, I was going to say, that freeze response can happen on both sides. So if you are somebody going past, it might trigger something in you to freeze. So delegating, having that conversation with somebody close by who might have a different response, that's a great way. Because I'm just thinking about how I would, sometimes when I have seen situations, or I think my reaction is often to freeze or, that type of fear reactions.
Now that you mentioned like your own reaction, I feel like delegate is so helpful, especially in situations in public transportation and in spaces where there are other people, because I've definitely been in buses here in New York City where we all notice something wrong is happening. We all notice these two people, there's tension there. Yeah. But we're all stuck. We're not saying anything or doing anything. So if you can delegate, if you can just use simple words like, hey, do you feel comfortable saying something? Do you feel comfortable getting help from the bus driver? If you just engage the person next to you, that can then de-escalate the situation because there's more people involved. Yeah. So I mean, even just saying stuff like you say, can you see this? Is it just me? Or bringing on other people gives you that, if you are outside witnessing harassment, it almost gives you that extra protection to, go in and help. And of course, there's more to delegate because there are a lot of different forms, different figures that you can delegate to. But I think that's a powerful one that I definitely want to share. The person next to you sitting on the bus. Yeah, absolutely. That one makes it, they all, are great so far. So we've got distract, delegate. I'm going to remember all of these. And I am going to ask you a question about them at the end. So. Okay. Our third D is document. And documentation feels pretty instinctual to a lot of us nowadays because of our phones. Oh, yeah. We see a lot of people, the instinct is to document, to take a video, to get evidence, a photo, to get evidence. But something I'd like to stress with document, because I think everyone knows how to take a video on their phone or they're familiar with it, is one that it can also be written. So documentation can be you writing down every single detail you remember of a situation if you don't have a phone, as in exact words said, exact place and time. Right. So documentation doesn't have to be digital, but also the way that documentation is going to be supportive is if you give it to the person who's been harassed. Yeah. I was going to say, you might see, someone might just take a video and then, but it will
almost not do anything with that video. So there has to be, you'd have to be doing something with the video to obviously give it its purpose. If not, you're just kind of watching and taking a video, right? Not that people would do that, but
sometimes our minds, you know, our normal thought process is accelerated in moments of stress like that. So something to keep in mind is, once you have that video, once you have that photo and you're asking, what should I do with it? Give it to the person who's been harassed. And doing that, you're giving them power that was just taken away from them, because then they can choose what they do with the evidence. And they have a lot of choices, but it should be up to them. Because it is something, a trauma that happened to them. So maybe they don't want it spread on social media, because it is something they'd never want anyone else to see, never want a loved one, a parent to see. So it is up to them, but maybe they do want to share it, right? So you can suggest.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because, you know, it is a traumatic experience, and everybody's, oh, it's frozen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think so. I kind of heard myself then, but I was going to say it is a traumatic experience. So it's up to the person who is obviously experiencing these things to kind of heal in the way that's best for them or move forward. So it is trauma related. You know, because I have had an experience of harassment a couple of years ago, and I kind of like didn't really think about it, but today I really was thinking about it a lot because of everything that's on the news. And, you know, I knew we was having this conversation, and it really just it came back up again, and it made me think, you know, it does stay with you, those experiences, even it's not a small experience. So, you know, something that happened 2 years ago on the street, somebody following you, it's scary, and it stays with you.
And it affects, you know, your relationship with spaces. It affects your relationship with strangers and with new people that come into your life, and with yourself, with how you, what I find, you know, frustrating and unjust is how it affects the way that we behave and that we carry ourselves. You know, the idea that people change how they dress to avoid street harassment. I've been harassed on the street with a big old coat in the middle of the winter. How you dress doesn't matter. It's all a power dynamic. It's all, you know, someone using their power to disrespect you on the street. So, yeah. With
my experience, it was, I'll just go into a little bit. So basically it was somebody who, it was raining and it was dark at night, and I didn't really notice what was going on, but somebody like followed me into my apartment block basically. And I had that feeling that something like didn't feel right. And then when I opened my door to go into my actual apartment, the person actually tried to push to get into my apartment, and I was so scared. I literally was on the other side, he was on one side, and I was like screaming. I was like, you know, just shutting the door shut. And since then, so that was probably 2 years ago, you know, I don't really like to walk outside when it's dark now because of that incident. And, you know, this is 2 years ago. But then I'm like, oh, I need to try and walk outside in the dark. And, you know, like you say, it's not what you're wearing. It does put fear into you. But, yeah. You have to kind of, I don't know, like try and work through it.
You do have to look at the harassment. You have to process it, because and this is the second part of our training, just to bring it back to the second part of our training. We do focus on when harassment happens to you. And the most essential thing with any kind of, you know, experience that brings even a little bit of trauma to your life, it is that you have to look at it and process it and acknowledge the hurt it's bringing. Because there is no healing when you just ignore a wound. So
absolutely. I mean, we cover a lot of healing for the whole spectrum of kind of like sexual violence, and just my experience with that also. It was something that I just pushed down for so long, and I think, yeah, you have to go to the wound to heal, to move forward. But it's obviously it is uncomfortable, and it can be scary going to that wound to start with.
Yes. And so I never push. Thank you for sharing that with me. I don't push folks to, explore things they're not ready for. So I think maybe you were ready in this moment to think about this story.
Yeah. I mean, I did tell, obviously, after that harassment happened, after, I was kind of like trying to laugh it off for about 2 weeks. I was like, oh, it wasn't really anything. No, I'm fine. And then, it really did affect me, because I didn't really like to go outside in the dark, and I just felt unsafe. So it does have an effect, even when my personality is to kind of like laugh things off in the first instance. But yeah.
I can relate to that. I experienced a lot of harassment in my high school year, and I also sort of laughed experiences off that did end up affecting my school route, so the way I got to school. So they had a huge effect on my time. It took a lot of time away from me, and I don't blame myself for my response, because whatever your response was in the moment, it's what you needed. It's
absolutely, it's your survival, isn't it, to take you to the place, when you are ready to kind of go there and heal it in a bit more of a deeper level. But yeah, obviously the responses that we have are in the moment, survival. So sorry, I kind of went off on it. We went away from the D's.
I think it was necessary. I think we're still in the same in the same path of talking about the same thing, right? Yeah.
So okay, I'm gonna recap. So we've got I've got the worst memory. Wait. What is the first one? Distract.
Yes.
But number 1, distract. Number 2, delegate. Number 3, document.
Document. Yes. And the fourth one, and I kind of don't like to say this until towards the end of the trainings, to not influence anyone, but delay is my favorite one, and it's the next one. So delay is showing up for someone after harassment has ended. And I'll say this, often that's the only choice we have when we are bystanders to harassment.
Yeah.
Because harassment can happen very quickly, and you couldn't stop it in the middle of it happening, right? So the harasser, the person who did the harassment, maybe has driven off already, and you're left there in shock, and the person who's been harassed is left there in shock, but you can still show up for them. And we know that this intervention is helpful for that person's healing, because we know that as little as a knowing glance from a stranger, according to our research with Cornell University, and as little as a knowing glance from a stranger can have a positive effect on someone's healing from the trauma of harassment. So when you do delay, what you're doing is you're going up to that person and sharing your words of support, saying, I'm sorry this happened to you. What can I do to help you right now? I saw what happened. It's not okay. What do you need from me? Those words, acknowledging what happened to them, showing up in support, is powerful. And it's also so approachable for so many of us to do.
I really like delay. So I think delay might be one of my favorite ones so far too. And I think you're so right with, it is just going back to the phrases of, like believe survivors, support survivors, just having that, like you say, even a glance, even just someone knowing that, what you expect, it affirms kind of, not that you need someone to tell you that actually happened to you and that was bad, but having someone there to kind of comfort and reassure you, I can see how that would have a positive impact on the healing. Yeah,
and I think it's also helpful to not, especially younger people who are a group that is harassed a lot more often in public spaces than other groups. to not you're learning about the world as a young person. So when something happens to you, you may internalize it and think, this is how the world is, or something is wrong with me, and it's my fault this way and that way. So when someone else acknowledges it, that it's not acceptable behavior and is, acknowledging your hurt, you're not going to internalize it. You're going to realize, okay, this is a society problem I walked into.
Yeah.
It's not anything to do with me.
Yeah.
And
it is, you're totally right. It's a society problem. And going back to the question we had earlier with, men need to be having these conversations too. This is a human issue. So it's a society issue. Everybody, needs to be intervening when they can. Right? Yeah. I don't know what word I made up there. Sorry.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think to close off the 5Ds, the last one, so all the other ones are indirect actions, and the last one is direct. The one direct action that we suggest, we only suggest if you feel safe enough to do that. All the other actions are helpful, bringing an end to harassment, de-escalating a situation, showing support. Direct is doing the same thing, just directly talking to the person doing the harassing and asking them to stop. So that is really all you need to say to them. We don't suggest going into a back and forth. That person, isn't going to change their core to their core because of an argument, or we can't give you those right words that are going to turn people who harass into people who don't harass anymore. They're not the focus of bystander intervention. The focus is the person who's been harassed. So when you direct yourself to that person, be firm and final with what you're saying. So stop. You can insert the action they're doing. It's harassment. You need to stop. You're making them uncomfortable. So showing up like that, being direct and final with that person, is going to de-escalate the situation as well, because you're not going to start an argument with anyone.
I like that the focus is on, the person who is being harassed, not the actual person. All of this is helping the person who is being harassed. So, and I like that is the very last one. There's so many different things. Most people would probably think that's the only way that you can, be a bystander and intervene, by just going up to the person and saying stop. But there's so many other ways that you just explained. And I think even for myself now, I'm like, even the delegate, I think delegate, on the bus, if I was next to somebody, that is something that I would definitely do.
I'm glad. Well, that was not going to be my question to you. I can still ask you the question.
Yeah.
We like to, so our trainings are interactive. So we like to engage through polls on Zoom, and we ask the question, what is your superpower? So which one of these are you really good at, like better than other people likely?
I would like to be, but you don't need to be the one who's direct. A lot of people are like, I wish I was direct, but I know in that instance I'd probably be scared, because I would freeze or well, you just don't know. It depends on the whole scenario and everything. But I do feel like delegate is one that I could do, as in, I can help. If there's people around, I'd be like, right, we need to do something about it. And what was the other one? Sorry, the one where the person has left.
Delay.
Delay. So delay. I think like reassuring the person after, and having that conversation there, I'd be good at, and delegating. So if I did see something, getting other people to help, like diffuse the situation, would be my two.
All right. I think that's really interesting. It always lets me know, when people respond that, it lets me know, a little bit about their personalities, a little bit about how you carry yourself in public spaces. So maybe you are that person that, can move others into action, can engage the crowd to, do the right thing, because we all know that something bad is happening in those situations. So moving others into action can be easy, can just be starting a conversation with someone. And
I think, now we're talking about it, I'm like, I would do that one. Could I ask that question back to you? What would be your kind of superpower out of the 5Ds?
So I did say delay was my favorite, but I actually think I am better than most people at direct.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm like I'm 5'1", and that is, I'm sorry, that is our measuring system. So I don't know if that means
no, that's I think that's how we measure here too. 5'1", I'm 5'7", 6. So it's the same, right? Same way of measuring. I don't actually know what the numbers stand for. It's like inches.
It's like feet and inches, So I'm 5'1". What I mean by that is I'm pretty short. But in those moments, and just in the past, in moments when I intervene, that is the one that just comes naturally to me in a way that other people maybe don't want to use that. And I think maybe it does have something to do with feeling like I'm not intimidating anyone. I know that I'm not intimidating anyone, but I'm also not I'm not confronting someone in a way that's going to escalate a situation. So that's why I feel comfortable
as well. To be direct is not just going up to a person and shouting and be like da, 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 da. Some people might think that is direct, just being like but it's diffusing the situation, like you say, and calling out what you see to the person directly to move it along.
If you do, I will say, if you do feel like when you choose direct and you have a short temper, someone responding back to you may want to make you respond back to them, and you may fall into like a shouting match type of situation. I'd say you don't have to use direct. You can use any of the other Ds and be helpful and avoid making that person who's been harassed feel like the situation is escalating or getting out of control, or make them feel any more unsafe. So it's also knowing, how much can I do, considering my identity and considering all these things about myself. But how much can I do considering my personality? And
this is it. It is related to the person, and as a bystander, you don't need to push yourself in a way that, obviously, we all want to stop harassment in all its forms, like you explained, but you have to protect you have to do what's right by what feels right for you. So even when we're talking about direct, then I was like feeling a bit like anxious, thinking if I was saying that to someone, I would feel anxious, I think. So you have to listen to your emotions, listen how you feel as well as a bystander before responding, I guess.
I think you put it well. Listen to your own response. Definitely.
Well, amazing. I think we've covered quite a lot of stuff there already. We're going to wrap up pretty soon, but I also noticed that you have I don't know if you want to go into this a little bit, but you also look at online spaces and safety in online spaces is it Heart Mob? Is it called Heart Mob?
Yeah.
Could we just have a little intro into that and kind of what you do? Because I think obviously with everybody, the situation that majority of the world is in at the moment, a lot of communication, a lot of conversations and connection is happening online. So I think safety in online spaces as well is super important.
So we have definitely been in conversation with resources and just the topic of online harassment for years. Because we get stories about online harassment as well, and we wanted harassment in all its forms ended, right? So that is part of it. So we created a platform a couple of years back, and we are still in the process of making it better and better, called HeartMob, iHeartMob.org. So that is still running, and it is an online community, and that is regulated by us to make sure that there are no trolls or people that mean harm joining it. And it is a platform where anyone who experiences online harassment can, share their story and ask for support, whether that be advice of what they can do, their options, but also just support from others who maybe have experienced something similar.
Yeah.
So you can sign up to the website if you've experienced it, but also if you just want to show up as a person that can support when people share their stories. And that, as I said, that website is in the process of just growing because there is attention on this topic. So
yeah,
I would say keep an eye out for that, and for us,
amazing.
for on our Instagram, we're definitely gonna make announcements about it once.
Yeah.
There's more.
Great. Well, it sounds so, I mean, there's a lot going on. And my last question was actually going to be, so I know that you're in, is it 21 cities? This is from the website, 21 cities, 16 countries. What is coming up next for this year for you at the
so
team?
we are we're still growing. We're changing our relationships with all our sites around the world, and they're planning a lot of interesting things coming up when it comes to International Anti-Street Harassment Week, the second week of April.
Right.
So you may be seeing some activity on social media, and a lot of our sites have moved their work online. So, not as many in-person events or marches as we've all been involved in, but more online campaigns to address harassment because of circumstances being what they are. But I was just in the call with a site yesterday, so they're still active, and we are working with them, and we are also working with L'Oreal Paris and other partner organizations through that connection to launch stand-up in a lot of different places around the world. So the Caribbean, Mexico, we've launched in different places in Europe like France and Spain. And so stand-up, this training that we're delivering to the world, because we want to train 1 million people in bystander intervention.
I mean, it's so important though, and the way that even I know there's a lot more depth that you go into, but I've even learned a lot from this live, and more people need to hear what you're doing, because going back to the 5Ds, and a lot of people thinking there is only one way that you can support the situation. There's at least five ways, and it's so important the work that you're doing, and it's amazing that you're getting out there and spreading the message, and reaching 1 million to give this training is just amazing.
So the 1 million we're going to reach out worldwide, but definitely here, we're based out of the US, but we are international, so we're trying to reach as many folks with this, because like you said, I think more people, I just personally think the more people in our communities that know this, the more people are going to show up in the moments that we need them, that I might need them. So I'm looking forward to that world where, bystander intervention is just a thing we do for each other.
And that is a beautiful way to end our lovely conversation. We're hoping for a world, working towards a world where we can be there for each other and intervene. I keep getting the word intervene wrong for some reason. So we can intervene on these when these things happen. So thank you so much for jumping online and connecting and sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Work. It's been great. And I'll definitely be keeping an eye out to see everything that you guys are up to. So thank you so much.
We will follow everything your account is up to. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.